Have you ever noticed how across the globe in every culture there's a tradition of making statues of little guys? Welcome to Conjuredcraft. My name is Taryn. Let's get started. Over the past 2 years in my travels across the EU, I have been very fortunate to get to visit a number of museums full of idols and statuettes still in their home countries. And while the construction on them vary greatly from figures of authority and wealth to symbols of reverence for gods and other deities, to my absolute favorite, simple clay toys for children, the fact remains we've always been obsessed with making miniatures. And I think that is still true today. Maybe we're not sitting around making clay homunculi, but a number of us are painting our very highly detailed war Barbies. And while it's not a one-to-one, I think that tradition is still alive and well, and I want to explore that a little bit more in today's craft. One of the members of my home game is playing a cleric who was raised as a follower of Bahamut, the Forgotten Realms variety, rather than the early Islam mythos where the name comes from. And I have to admit, it caught me a little bit off guard. In my campaign setting, Sedalia, I haven't used a traditional pantheon because there aren't capital G gods. There are eidolons, beings as close to what can be thought of as ideal. But my home game is a shared story, so if one of my writers wills the Platinum Dragon into existence, who am I to tell them no? My mood board for the eidolons is secret since I don't want to influence how my team might view them, but while doing some research for this craft, I found this image by Cosimo Galluzi. It isn't a classical dragon that you might think of, and it also isn't what I had in mind for the Arbiter of Justice. That means it's a great start as a rendering for my idol. The fire coming out of the head could have been seen by one of the first mortals as a fire-breathing dragon, and rather than having gold banding, I'm just going to imagine that that's silver instead. Finally, I have one other idea to make this artifact into a functional prop for the table. With some kitchen foil, I make a wide cone for the neck of the statue. This is covered in a thin layer of clay, which I bake so that I now have a solid armature to work from. While that's in the oven, I made a jig out of cardboard and paper that I can shove clay into, shave off the excess with my metal kidney, and then have some mostly identical bands of clay. I have to start from the summit and work my way down so that I can get a nice seam in between each of the bands of armor on our Justice Maker. I go back to refine the edges, clean it with some solvent, and then bake the clay to save my work. When the clay is out of the oven, I do a very light sanding to fix any blemishes before moving on to the head. In my original idea for this video, I thought I would try traditional clay and to make this statuette with crude tools and limited resources, but in thinking about the history of those terracotta models, that felt a little inauthentic. That's not my craft, it's not how I work. Maybe I am just overthinking it, but we have access to better clay, better tools, and while the methods have changed, we still make things with our hands. We're still connected to that tradition, and I felt that this was close enough for me. I did use a little bit of white craft glue when I attached the head to the neck. It works exactly the same, if not better, than the more expensive clay glue that's marketed for polymer clays. I actually have a video where I tested this with both baked and unbaked clay, and you can watch that here. In my original sketches, I was thinking of this reference board I have full of Cthulhu icons. Eldritch totems are something I find very interesting since we have no earthly idea what the old ones actually look like. And in that spirit, I don't want to inform the design of Bahamut in this world too much. I also realized that I was ambitious on my time and how much clay I actually have. I went back to the drawing board and decided I would make something more akin to a canopic jar, just without any internal organs. If you're new here by any chance, firstly, welcome. I hope you decide to stay. But secondly, I've been using polymer clay to make this figurine, the kind of clay you need to bake in the oven. I have, at this point, over 80 videos on my channel, many of which cover sculpting with clay, but if you're looking for where to start, you can watch this video here. And of course, if you have any questions, just let me know in the comments. Once our figure was completely baked, sanded, and all cleaned up, I noticed a couple of tears, a couple of breaks in the clay that I wanted to patch up. I wanted to test a weird idea that I had to make some polymer clay slip. Using the sanded clay that I saved from making all the adjustments to our figure and some of the solvent, the paint thinner that I use to smooth out the sculpture, I tried mixing the two together into a paste to patch those holes, to patch the little breaks. This unfortunately didn't work as well as I would have hoped, and I'll just need to go back over it with some fresh clay to fix all those little problem areas. It's important to chase those ideas though, to try out new things, new practices that even if we're not sure if they'll work, we'll still learn something by doing it and by failing at it. And I think, in a way, that's also part of this tradition of making little clay idols. I wanted this statuette of the Justice Bringer to have a real element of flame, or at the very least, some smoke. While you weren't looking, I actually made the top of this figure so that it would fit a round piece of metal from an incense burner. And once it's glued into the crown of our Bahamut, I think I'm going to be able to use this in a pretty unique way at my table. I'm obviously creating an opportunity for my player, the cleric, to purchase this idol in-game, and I know it'll make a lovely prop on its own, but I want to use it in a way to create a more immersive bit of storytelling. I was talking to my old game master, my favorite game master, about the new mechanics of Shadow Dark, specifically when it comes to torches. If a player lights a torch in-game, you set a timer, and after 1 hour of real life time, if they have not doused it or lost it, the torch is finished, it's burnt out. I'm thinking I can use this incense burner in a similar fashion. I could track light, that's one way to go about it. I could also use it as a way to signify when a real world event needs to happen, right? And that could be private information for me as the DM or public information for the group, putting a bit of pressure on them. I think it's always good to keep your players engaged and to keep the ball moving as much as you can within reason. I'm also thinking that maybe I could use it as a way to signify that a presence, an eidolon, something is among us. I don't know, a little bit spooky, could be fun. To those of you who engaged in the ritual of watching this tale to its conclusion, giving praise through the sacred like button, and subscribing for more, you have my eternal gratitude. Even more so to my coven over on Patreon, who have early access to all of my crafts, ad-free videos, and at this point, I think over 200 bonus posts. So check that out if you'd like to keep this channel going. My eternal gratitude to Cosimo for their amazing work, and to my fellow storytellers at the table for helping me develop the rich lore of the world of Sedalia. Until next time, I'll see you soon.